I didn't come back to stir up trouble, I came back to breathe. To remember. My dad passed 6 months earlier, and I just wanted a few days alone at the lake house he built with his own 2 hands back in the 70s. The plan was simple: clean up the place, hang his old flag, maybe sit on the porch and listen to the wind whistle through the trees like it used to. But the moment I pulled into that gravel driveway, I had no idea I was about to declare war over a flag. The first time I saw her, she was already on my property. Tall, thin, buttoned up in that tidy little power sweater, clipboard in one hand, a phone in the other, like she was ready to find me and live stream it. "Are you Mr. Dalton?" she asked, squinting at me like I was a trespasser on my own land. I told her yeah, this was my dad's place. "Well," she said, looking up at the flagpole, "you're violating Section 8.3 of the Lake Hollow Homeowners Association bylaws. Exterior displays are subject to board approval, and national or military flags are not permitted without express written consent." I blinked. "You're telling me I need permission to fly the American flag and a Navy flag for my son?" She gave this polite smile that made me want to throw something. "We're all patriots here, Mr. Dalton. But rules are rules." That was my introduction to Cynthia. Or as the neighbors called her behind her back, Commander Cynthia. She wasn't just on the HOA board, she was the board. And she had plans for this part of the lake. Plans that didn't include people like me, people who remembered when this place was dirt roads, no gates, no rules, just trees and water and freedom. The very next morning, I found a warning tape to the door. Second violation notice. Second. I'd been there less than 24 hours. It claimed my porch railing didn't meet updated aesthetic standards. My dad and I built that railing together. I sanded every post by hand, and now it was non-compliant wood texture. I tried to stay civil. I called the HOA number. Left voicemails. No response. Emailed. Nothing. I went to the HOA office and found it locked, but you bet there was a new sign posted out front: Lake Hollow is undergoing aesthetic upgrades to enhance community value. That same day, a landscaping crew showed up without warning and started tearing up the edges of my gravel driveway, saying it spilled into common space. I asked them who sent them. They said the board. Things escalated fast after that. Fines started stacking up. $150 for the flags. $300 for unauthorized materials. Another $200 for an unregistered pet, even though my dog Milo's been with me for 10 years and had lived there with my dad plenty of times before. I wasn't just dealing with pettiness, this felt like a shakedown. And I wasn't the only one. I started talking to neighbors, folks who'd lived here longer than Cynthia had been out of college. A woman named Marjorie had been fined for the color of her front door, even though it had been painted the same shade of blue since 1982. A veteran named Carl was told his flagpole was a visual obstruction. Another guy got hit with a $500 fine for having wind chimes outside of permitted decibel levels. The deeper I dug, the uglier it got. Cynthia had been quietly redrawing the HOA boundaries to include properties that had never opted in. The documents weren't filed with the county properly, but the board was acting like they had legal authority. It wasn't about community upkeep. It was about control. And money. Turns out, the HOA had partnered with a specific vendor for paint, gravel, landscaping, and you couldn't hire anyone else without getting fined. That vendor. Cynthia's brother-in-law. The fees. Almost double what you'd pay anywhere else. I decided to fight back. I went to the county. Showed them the maps, the fines, the letters. I printed every email, every so-called violation. I walked into the zoning office with a folder as thick as a phone book and a fire in my gut. They didn't laugh me out of the building. In fact, they took it real seriously. And that's when the tide started to turn. A week later, 2 county inspectors showed up unannounced, not to my place, but to Cynthia's house. They went straight to her porch with clipboards and measuring tapes. She stood there watching them with that same tight-lipped smile, but this time it didn't look so smug. And then came the call. A local reporter had caught wind of the whole mess. "Flag war at Lake Hollow," the headline read. My face wasn't in the picture, but the flags were. The story blew up. Other folks from neighboring counties started chiming in online. Turns out, a lot of people had horror stories about overreaching HOAs. Under pressure, the county declared that Cynthia's redrawn boundaries weren't legally enforceable. My land and several others were never part of Lake Hollow HOA jurisdiction. Every fine, every warning, every threat of lien was void. Not only that, the county opened an ethics investigation into the HOA's vendor relationships. Cynthia resigned 3 days later. Greg, the so-called compliance officer, who'd showed up with a tape measure to count the inches of my porch railing, disappeared overnight. Word is he moved to Florida. In the weeks that followed, the entire board crumbled. The HOA, once a little dictatorship with manicured lawns and fake authority, had been publicly gutted. I replaced the flagpole with a bigger one. Bought solar-powered lights to keep it glowing through the night. And on the front of the porch, I mounted a sign carved into cedar, "In this house, we don't bow to bullies." And wouldn't you know it, the neighbors started showing up again. Marjorie brought cookies. Carl offered to repaint the dock. A couple even asked if they could hang out by the fire pit like they used to. It was like we all came out of hiding. The lake is quiet again. Not dead, just calm. The way my dad liked it. Sometimes I sit in that old rocking chair, the one that creaks like it's got something to say, and I can almost hear his voice, proud, maybe even a little amused. Told you this place had a fight in it. I don't know where Cynthia went. Someone said she moved into one of those gated suburban complexes where they fine you for mismatched curtains. Maybe that's where she belongs. But here, we earned back our peace. And not because we rode over, but because we pushed back. Because we said, not today. So if you've got a neighbor who thinks a clipboard makes them royalty, or an HOA trying to rewrite your rights, speak up. Ask questions. Get your paperwork in order and fight smart. Because when people try to dress up control as community, that's when you really have to take a stand. And if you've ever been through something like this, I'd love to hear it. Drop a comment. Let's talk about what real neighborhoods are supposed to be.